Okay, good morning everyone. Bon matin, tout le monde. On va commencer. Let's get going. Good morning. I hope you all had a pleasant evening last night and were able to go to the poster presentation down at Pier 21. I know for myself, I was able to see a new exhibit that was at Pier 21, which was quite moving and very appropriate to have this conference host the poster session there. And for many of you, maybe enjoy a walk along the boardwalk. I know that some people were on the search for some famous donuts that Halifax has as well. I hope you found them. But we are going to start this morning with our second plenary of the conference entitled Drivers of Change in a Digital Era, AI, Information Flows, and Immigration. So I'm going to turn it now over to Louisa Taylor, who is the Executive Director of Refugee 613, and the speakers in the first plenary to get us started. Over to you.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Louisa Taylor and I'm Executive Director of Refugee 613. We're a communications and mobilization hub based in Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. And I want to also acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and we're very grateful to be able to gather here today on this territory and have the conversations that we're having. When Vicky and P2P invited me to moderate a plenary on artificial intelligence, my initial reaction was excitement followed by panic. Excitement because I recognize the importance of this topic, and I'm one of those people who loves the convenience of AI. You know, it helps me draft policies faster, find the right document in a sea of PDFs, and organize my schedule. But I'm also one of those people who feels overwhelmed by the rapid advancement of AI, the astonishing pace of its intrusion into every aspect of our work and lives, the significant threats it poses to equity, to ethics, and the damaging impact we already see it having in our environment. I'm probably not the only person who, every time I make the choice to use AI, I think about the water being used just for that one prompt I'm giving it. So I felt this seductive yet concerning duality of AI in writing these opening remarks, and I actually went to AI for feedback on an early draft. And it was very helpful, but I did not appreciate how it changed my views from what I had put in, which was slightly terrified and overwhelmed, to occasionally a little nervous. So if you too experience that mix of admiration, apprehension, fear, and curiosity, you're in good company this morning. And that's exactly why this conversation matters. AI is already shaping immigration policy, service delivery, and decision-making, sometimes in ways we can clearly see, and sometimes in ways that are in the background. So today's speakers will help us bring those changes into the light. I'm delighted to introduce a panel of people who understand this terrain far better than I do and can help us unpack both the promise and the pitfalls of AI in the immigration ecosystem and the impact it may have in the coming decade. So this morning's plenary, Drivers of Change in a Digital Era, AI, Information Flows, and Immigration, will look at advances in AI and digital tools and their impact on immigration decision-making and processes, the way in which information is accessed and used, and the delivery of services to newcomers. First, we're going to hear from Mario Bellissimo of Bellissimo Law Group on concerning implications for the immigration pathways people take to Canada and how their cases are processed. Then we will be hearing from Elizabeth Colson, Ryan Batluni, and Paul Alexander about a joint research project that they have undertaken on the use of AI in service delivery. And Philip Mai from the Social Media Lab of Toronto Metropolitan University will speak to us about information and misinformation on immigration in Canada. You can learn more about each of the presenters in their bio in the program. We're going to hear from each of them, about 15 minutes each, and then have time for a Q&A using Slido before we wrap up at 10:45. So with that, I'd like to invite Mario to the microphone to get us started.
Thank you, everyone. It is an absolute privilege to be here. And even though this is a presentation on AI, to show you how old school you can be, here are my notes. So not very techy, but yes. But let me begin with a simple question. If the gatekeeper who's deciding your future, but you cannot see that gatekeeper, how do you trust the process? And that's the reality many newcomers face today. Every immigration system has a gate. For decades, that gate was opened by a person, someone who you could look in the eye, ask a question, explain your story to. Today, in many cases, that gatekeeper is no longer visible. It's an algorithm, a triage model, a digital system quietly influencing who gets processed faster, who is flagged for review, who might define you for years and decades to come, and those who wait and wait without ever knowing why. I see this intersection every day in my advocacy, from the courtrooms to the boardrooms to the committee rooms. And really what we're asking ourselves is, how do we protect people in a world where automation accelerates faster than oversight? Which brings us to a core tension, and we've heard about it already in the conference. In moments of high demand, excuse me, and reducing staff, there's a growing allure, a belief that technology can make up for the people power. And while humans are still in the loop, the pathways leading to those decisions are increasingly shaped by digital tools. Now, I believe the technology can be truly transformational, not as a replacement for human judgment, but as a powerful tool to modernize, to equalize, enhance, and humanize the system when legislated and used responsibly. We are not there yet. William Gibson, some of you may have heard of him, the Canadian novelist, often called the father of cyberpunk. I love that. And one of the first to imagine how digital worlds reshape real ones, once said, "The future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed." And that's true, because technology is shaping not just how applications move through the system, but it's shaping how public opinion forms. It's shaping how narratives about migrants spread online and how governments respond to those shifting sentiments. So today I explore three drivers of change in the digital era: IRCC's uses of automation, digital distrust, and automated assumptions, and how to best leverage moving forward. So ultimately, migration is not just about data flow, it's a doorway. And I like to kind of think about it as every newcomer standing in front of that doorway with something in their hands, a degree, a dream, a child, their story. So in this digital era, we really have to decide what kind of doorway we are building. One that scans people in silence, or one that opens with clarity, fairness, and dignity. The technology is here. As Louisa mentioned, it's everywhere in our lives. The real question is whether we use it to open doors or to make them harder to see. So let's begin. IRCC's uses of automation. Let's look a little behind the curtain. So, automation, use of business rules that are derived directly from the Act and regulations, and importantly, or created by officers based on their experience and expertise. Those rules we have no access to, nor do apparently deciding officers. And then some tools use all the things we know about advanced analytics, and some are a combination of all of these. And they use these tools throughout the processing. It began first with triaging, okay, and then it escalated. Oh, just keep calling on me. Oh, sorry. I'm losing myself here. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so we look at triage and distribution across pretty much most categories now. Positive eligibility, automation. Some of these terms you may have heard in the past: Watchtower, Lighthouse, Chinook. Detecting incomplete files, responding to inquiries, chatbot, summarizing case info, supporting biometric assessments. And these tools can be broken up into three categories: decision tools, you see there, triage tools, and processing aids. And then there's the more serious tools, I would say, predictive analytics. This ITAT is based on 900 fraud patterns. Similar to the CBSA's tool, which is called TCI, a Traveler Compliance Indicator. It's really predicting your future behavior. But we don't have access to behind the curtain. Then there's some exciting developments. The digital platform modernization, which you may have heard about. This was launched in 2024. And really they're looking to collapse everything into a single digital window for all programs. There's an expanded online account that now supports visitor visas and adult passport renewals. Again, a single digital window. And then, really, chatbots, client inquiry management systems for faster response time, designed to reduce delays and streamline client communication. Potentially positive developments. The digital visa pilot, 2025-2026, will issue visas electronically, eliminating mailing delays. And they're testing expansion. And then there's AI in the back office operation. Planned rollout has begun, it's continuing. And again, further expansions with the caveat that the ultimate decision remains with humans. Thank you. So why the digital distrust, and what are some of the automated assumptions? Well, from a privacy standpoint, IRCC built these all out by privacy by design principles. From applicants' perspectives, there was little to no notice, consultation, or disclosure on automated uses or AI-supported uses. And again, it became like a treasure hunt. What's the newest acronym or newest name? Haraya, Chinook, Row, ITAT, and others like Quaid, Lighthouse, Watchtower, Quantum. You may have heard some of these. Unbelievable. And you get all these blogs and people saying, this is exciting. What's happening? So only after ATIP requests, legal challenges, and public pressures did we begin to have details released. Transparency was not prioritized. So now the issue is framed as operational secrecy versus legal accountability. It's an unfortunate place for us to be. Now, IRCC maintains these systems are internal tools that help officers. They do not make final decisions, so they do not require legal review. To date, the federal court has supported this view. So now we ask, how do we define the human in the loop? Well, now this is a decision from a real case. Reasons began to become quite generic. And what you'll notice here is that at the top, July 17th, 2024, at 17:07, is when the officer actually entered their reasons. At the exact same time, they used Chinook 3+ to populate those reasons. So what is the human in the loop? Is it seconds? Here it seems to be at the exact same moment. The latest iteration of reasons is this. Some of you may have already seen it. and they're called Officer Decision Notes, ODNs, which is something we've been waiting a long time for. Let us see, when the case is decided, what were the reasons for that decision. Well, we finally got them, but then all reference to time, which officer made the decision, if technology was used, has all been scraped out. We have the generic reasons, and you'll see there, and any accompanying family member, if applicable. So let's look at a few real-world examples. Is judging an applicant's intention to visit Canada based on a sibling who made a refugee claim that has no connection to the present applicant a fair indicator? Well, it was used in a trio of cases called KISS. An applicant was refused an ETA because behind the scenes, quietly, a negative indicator was, did a family member claim refugee status? That's not based in the Act or the regulations, but it was used. And the officer, and by extension, as I write there, might have used their expertise bias, that many people who have a sibling that claims refugee status, there's a higher preponderance that the individual will claim refugee status. That might have been an officer rule, not disclosed, but used. And then what about someone who applies that has been married 3 times, but one applicant is a widower and a survivor of abuse onto their 3rd marriage, whereas the second applicant has been involved in 2 issues surrounding marriage of convenience? The model may triage those individuals the exact same way, quantitatively, not qualitatively, and then they get sent into what I call orbit. So many of our stakeholders in the room have, and I won't read these because I'm tight on time, but they've discussed the human consequences of an opaque system. Digital divide, disproportionate impact, tech-driven exclusion impacting charter protections, which is a live issue now with Bill C-12, which is a discussion for another day. Delayed labor market integration, economic costs, narrow digital windows, programs that open for 7 minutes, and we refer to those as digital stampedes, where it's a click race to get your applicant in. No dignity to that. We've called for a dedicated AI oversight unit. I did it again last week before a parliamentary committee. And the guardrails, including algorithmic transparency. So now, how to best leverage the technology? And I want to move quickly here because I'm tight on time. We need to modernize forms, plain language, applicant-centric technology, eliminate the digital stampede, guarantee the right to meaningful human review, publish full privacy and algorithmic impact assessments, not just summaries. Use model cards to explain and demonstrate how these tools actually function, their limits and their oversight. Develop model card style documentation. What does that mean? Let's see what the officer sees. Let's see what populates the officer's screen so we understand the journey that our applicants are under. Anonymized research access. Communicate officer review times and training. How much time are they spending? In the Chinook litigation, they were very proud to say 120 seconds. I don't think that's a badge of honor when people are filing hundreds of pages of documentation. And scale individualization and precision at IRCC. So let me close with just a few comments. So every digital tool we adopt, we decide what we will illuminate and we decide what we will obscure. We can use automation to shine a light on opportunity, or we can use it in the shadow where assumptions harden and where human stories disappear behind the code. Ultimately, what the Pathways to Prosperity reminds us all is that digital systems may be built by government, but prosperity is built by all of us, advocates, universities, settlement agencies, and every partner who refuses to let these pathways lose their humanity. We have a very simple and profound responsibility to ensure the systems we build, participate in, accept, reflect the views we claim: openness, dignity, fairness, and shared prosperity. We now may be the only human in that loop that newcomers see It's a solemn responsibility and one we must take very seriously moving forward. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today? So my name is Rayan. I'm from the Syrian Canadian Foundation. We are a charity in Ontario. We work with all newcomers and refugees to Canada through three main pillars, which are language, skill building, and well-being. Today, I'm here to talk about a research program that we did as an organization in partnership with the University of Toronto in Mississauga. And the research is, so these are the team members that worked with us on this research study. So before I speak what the research is about, I just want to discuss, if we think about the barriers that newcomers face in Canada, what would be a first barrier that comes to mind other than probably employment? It's going to be language, of course. And what's one of the main barriers for language? It's mainly confidence. And when we talk about confidence, we're talking about the confidence to speak, the confidence to ask questions, the confidence to have an accent while you're expressing yourself, the confidence to ask questions or ask even people to repeat a sentence, even if you don't hear it, maybe you just nod because you're too shy of asking them to repeat because the other person is speaking fast. So, because of confidence, this research is exploring how can we use technology, specifically virtual reality and artificial intelligence, in supporting newcomers learn English faster, probably, and eliminating the real-life anxiousness of confidence. So if you're speaking to AI, you would ask all the silly questions that you're sometimes very shy to ask, right? So when we designed this program, we are teaching English. We developed an English curriculum that actually, we developed three English curricula. An English curricula for the standard classroom, the way we all probably learned at school. The second curricula was for artificial intelligence, and the third curricula was to be used in VR. So when we were designing this curricula, we were thinking, how can we design a curriculum that does not only serve research purposes, which were what we're trying to study, but it can also serve newcomers, a curricula that participants can connect with, they can relate to, and they can also benefit from. So it's designed for newcomers, specifically who are English CLB level 3 to 5, because it was hard for research purposes to start with AI with someone who is a CLB level 1, maybe. And we did an emphasis on how can this curricula be practical, benefit their day-to-day life, and integration. And we based it on empathy-based interviews and questionnaires. So these empathy-based interviews that we did prior to developing this curriculum, we got a lot of results from those, but there was a lot of focus on the need for community. Like, I want to learn English so that I can express myself, I can make friends. Even someone mentioned that if in this country, if you want to drink water, you actually need to speak English. So the curriculum in mind that we designed was focused on kind of three principles: the authenticity, empowerment, and cultural relevance. And I want to highlight here the importance of cultural relevance in that. Cultural relevance means that whatever client or even language or non-language service we are providing to newcomers, it's something they can relate to. The more they can relate to any type of services we provide, the more the service is successful and the more the positive outcomes that this service has. So with these 3 parallel curricula in VR, AI, and standard classrooms, we had around 140 participants in this study. The students used to come on a weekly basis and attend the classes. So this curricula that I'm discussing, we developed mainly. These are the topics that we covered throughout the weeks. We started with food because who doesn't like food? And people connect over food. Usually during the first session, whenever we bring up the topic of food, culture, what's your plate, people connect. And I'm again highlighting the word connect because with technology or without technologies, this is something that we saw throughout the program. The need to connect with other people was always there. So we started with food, and then the topics we covered related to Canada, cultural familiarization. So we all got culturally familiar in Canada in our encounters. Some encounters were nice, some encounters were challenging or uncomfortable. So what we tried to do is actually have this cultural familiarization in a safe place, kind of. So for example, what is an example of cultural familiarization? I had one newcomer, he was a week in Canada maybe, and he was working at Tim Hortons, and some person came, a client just ordered coffee, and the client asked to give him back loonies and toonies. So the Tim Horton person didn't understand that, like loonies and toonies. So the person repeated, yes, I want loonies and toonies. So the person went to his manager and told him, there's this man here asking me about a TV show, Looney Tunes. So that's exactly cultural familiarization, right? And I feel it's our job as settlement agencies, as nonprofits who work directly with newcomers, to kind of make this process less intimidating, less challenging, less uncomfortable for the newcomers. And it could be done in very little small tweaks here and there. So banking and finances, we did, the English class was about all the financial terms that one can use in the bank, like debit card, credit card, checking account, and all these terms that they can learn. And these terms will actually help them in their day-to-day life as they go and open a bank account. They've explored that, they've experienced that. Health and well-being, employment, mock interviews. So what we did in the VR, for example, all the students in the classroom were in a VR space that we created. So the session on banking and finances, it was an office where there's a bank teller, and students were having this conversation virtually. And this actually removed the in-person element, which is why one person mentioned, even when on VR, I feel nobody is seeing me, and it helps me speak. So the no one is seeing me is actually a push for people to make mistakes, and it's fine, I'm not there, and there's not the real life kind of stress or anxiety. So the future of language learning for newcomers when it comes to technology. I also have my notes on paper. Technology is very helpful, and it does eliminate a lot of factors that newcomers face, like the stress of speaking, the anxiety of making connections. But what we did notice in this study is the importance of community for people to actually feel comfortable and to thrive in general. AI is a tool, and VR are tools that kind of eliminate those factors, but there's no replacement of the human design element. So what made the study successful is having these components of the curriculum which tackle everyday life and where newcomers can connect with. This is what made VR successful. It's not VR eliminated the confidence and things just worked. And I feel that this is where the human design customization aspect is required, and then AI or VR would be the tool that actually help mitigate other factors that just us humans probably, it's more helpful than a non-person. So this is it for me. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Paul Alexander. I teach educational technology and immersive technologies at the University of Toronto. And I'm just going to add on to what Rajan was sharing with you. And if you look at the slide, what I have here is just a quick graphic or two to illustrate the design of our research studies. So what we had was we would have students come into our campus once a week over a 2-month period, and we would randomly assign them to one of two classes. There would be a standard class where they would just learn English as they normally would anywhere, say at the YMCA. And we also had another class that was VR-centric. And so what we would do is the students would come in usually on a Saturday, and we would the whole day they would be there for about half a day, and so their lessons were almost 2.5 hours long. So what we would do is the first part of the lesson we would just teach students as we normally would in a regular class. We would teach them vocabulary, grammar, sentence starters, and get them talking about certain topics that Rajan spoke to: banking, small talk, maybe job interviews, things of that sort. But, you know, if anyone here has ever taught English language before, you know a big part of the lesson usually involves the role play aspect. And so this is where, after they've learned all the vocabulary and grammar, now they put it to practice. And in a normal classroom, usually we just meet up with someone, a classmate sitting next to us, our elbow partner, and we would just take turns going through a script. And that's fine. And so one of our classes did that. But the other class, they were involved with the VR headsets. So when it came time for them to do the role play, rather than just talk with someone in their classroom, we would assign them a headset, and they would go into this virtual world where we had set up these scenarios for them to practice their language. You'll notice one thing is that the instructional part was usually about 60 minutes long, and then it was followed by 20 minutes in VR. We were very cognizant to make sure that our students, because our Canadian newcomers, none of them, or almost none of them, had ever used VR headsets before. We didn't want to overwhelm them with this technology. So we made sure that their role-playing moments were only about 20 minutes long, and we felt that worked quite well. And then we'd take a nice lunch break or break, and then come back and repeat the same strategy. Just very quickly, some of the takeaways. We felt that pedagogy or teaching methods was really, really crucial to having success in this study. Teaching then in just a traditional class, for example, when students go into VR, they tend not to listen to teachers. When they go into VR, they're in a space. They're like little kids. They run away, and they like to explore. So what's really interesting for teachers, by the way, when you're in these platforms, is there's this one thing in the teacher's menu system, and there's this big red button. And the big red button has one word on it. It's called summon. And so whenever the teacher wanted to bring the students back to one local place in VR, just click that red button, and it would just randomly collect all the students in that VR space and just bring them back to the teacher. So we thought that worked quite well. This is just a quick rendering of our classroom. You can see it was nice and spacious, and we would set up the students at different tables when they were in the VR experience. We quickly discovered that there needed to be more distance between the students, so we didn't have the audio feedback happening. Moving on here are some screenshots from some of our scenes. The first lesson or two was really about learning how to use the technology, how to use the hand controllers, move about, teleport, walk, and then even in the right image, turning their virtual wrist over where a little menu would pop up, and they could grab a 3D pen and start drawing or type Post-it notes and so forth. Here's some screenshots from some of our scenes throughout the program. We had a meet and greet in a gallery in the top left corner. We took them to an island where we worked on some of our adverbs of frequency on whiteboards. In the bottom left corner, Rajan talked about Canadian terminology like loonies and toonies and maybe double-double and things like that. So we had a lesson in a cafe, and maybe the most impressive VR experience was the job interviews. The students had actually prepared cover letters, resumes, and then they'd come to our class, and our teachers would interview them in a little boardroom. And they were so excited, their heartbeats would just not stop beating so rapidly. Very quickly, just another minute, I just want to share a few quotes from our students. The top one is rather long, but essentially it speaks to a student's reflection where she thought that she had gone through many English programs, and she thought that the VR experience was very authentic and meaningful for her. She thought that we had tied the language to real-life experiences that they might have in their everyday lives. The one in the bottom left corner, one thing that was a nice takeaway was when students were in virtual reality and they had these cartoon avatars, they felt this sense of freedom to speak. They weren't so conscientious about their pronunciation or accuracy with their verb tenses. They just wanted to talk. And so that was a nice takeaway. And then the teacher in the bottom right corner, he speaks to the engagement that students had with each other and with the technology and the excitement that came from it. I do have further slides to do with stats, but I'm going to save those for the conference if you want to look at them later. But one of the big takeaways for us was there was a lot of preparation in terms of using the technology, and then also one of our big things was teaching teachers how to use the teacher training aspect to guide them in teaching students effectively in these virtual worlds. And I'm just going to move on to Professor Liz. She'll come up and talk a little bit about a parallel study to do with AI.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Wonderful to be in Halifax, and thank you to my co-presenters as well. I just wanted to share with you the second year of this project, and I'll do that very quickly because I know we're short on time. But we actually, in the second year, we transitioned out of VR, and we started using AI. So we had an experimental group that used AI. I'll just flip to a slide so we could get started here. Sorry, 1 second. Back, yeah. So we did a quasi-experimental mixed method study to test the use of AI in one group and to test the non-use of AI in our standard group. And what we wanted to do was involve university students as well. So what we did was we trained university students to work in our standard class, and then we had AI as our tutor in the AI class. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about that project. So we had the same themes running through the AI program that Paul explained to you. And we first of all developed priorities around what we needed to see in our chat bot, or we used a way to check and see what we wanted to use. We ended up using ChatGPT. It was just rolling out at the time. And we wanted to use language learning, so we decided we would use the oral communication tool within ChatGPT. So students were in a computer lab, and basically they were set up to use prompts, and we collected the data from the prompts as well, which will be future analyzed, but I'll talk about what we did analyze. So we used something called EIT, so an illicit imitation test. And what we did was we provided 20 sentences that related to each of the themes, and the students in the first week of class actually listened to each of the sentences read aloud, and they had to respond on their phones to what they heard from that sentence. So it's illicit imitation response assessment tool. And we looked at the data at the beginning and the end of the program for both cohorts, so those that were in the AI classroom and those that were not in the AI classroom, in the standard classroom. We were trying to investigate if our human tutors in the classroom had a more significant impact than our AI tutor in the classroom. And just to kind of summarize very quickly, I'll just give you some information here. We used a multi-level modeling tool to analyze our data. We had our students helping with that as well. But we actually found there was no significant difference in the development of language skills in the two different groups. So they equally moved forward in their language skills, The non-AI group, control group, and the AI group, experimental, had equal impact in terms of development of their language skills. So you can see from this slide here as well. So we were kind of a little bit nervous about what do we do? Is the teacher being replaced? How do we deal with this information when it comes to AI? And as we move forward with the study, whoops, sorry, I'll just go back here a bit. We started to think about ways that AI can be used as a co-guide along the way, and we started to look at elements of how we can change and improve our content based on that experience. So we looked at the study from an AI perspective, a VR perspective, and you can look a little bit more at our data in our slides, but I won't take any more time because I know we're rushed. Thank you all.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Mai. I'm going to switch gear on you a little bit and talk a little bit more about the darker side of AI and how it's being used to basically fuel anti-immigrant misinformation here in Canada and abroad. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a quiz for you. Which of these photos do you think is AI generated? I'm going to give you a few seconds to make up your mind. Okay. Actually, but as you can see, it's very, very difficult now. In the early days, when some of these technologies were released, you could check the fingers, you can check the eyes, and a few other things. But over the last few months, they've gotten much, much better. So what that tells you is that we're about to be hit with a wave of misinformation in the future where it will be very difficult for us to make sense of what's going on in the world and to figure out which way to go on issues. And that's going to affect everybody here in this room and everybody you know. So to start with, I just want to tell you a little bit about the lab that I am from so that you know where I'm coming from, and talk a little bit about how Canadians consume news and how Gen AI adoption in Canada is a concern for Canadians, and talk about a little bit of the risk and mitigation strategies for immigration and settlement in particular. I'm part of the social media lab at Toronto Metropolitan University. We basically look at how people use different technologies like social media, AI, and so on to, live their lives, do their work, and be part of the Canadian society. Over the last few years, we've been doing a lot of work on propaganda, misinformation, foreign interference, and so on. So, for example, we recently, last year, looked at what type of misinformation from Russia and disinformation from Russia do Canadians believe? So we've surveyed 1,500 Canadians. We discovered that individuals who hold right-leaning ideology are more likely to believe in pro-Kremlin disinformation, for example. And those who believe in the claims are more likely to rely on social media. Not surprisingly, because if that's where they're spending all of their time, that's where they're going to run into a lot of this type of content. And the other thing that we just did recently was we were looking at how Ukrainian refugees are being talked about and discussed. If you think about it, the Ukrainian refugee crisis is something that is unique in recent memories. It is the first time where the refugee group is majority white. Every study on refugees and immigrants in the last 50 years is focused on people of color. So what we wanted to know is how does the bad actors online who are maligning refugees as a whole, but how are they attacking this particular group without being able to use some of the tropes, the skin colors, the language, the religion, wedges that they normally use? How do they talk about this particular group to convince policymakers not to support these people? So if you're interested in that study, the QR code is there. I'm not going to go over into detail because that's not the purpose of this particular talk. The other thing that we do at the lab is that we publish a lot of different public reports that help shed light on where people in Canada are spending time. For a long time, a lot of time when a reporter calls us and asks, what are Canadians doing online? We often say, look at Pew Internet in the US, and whatever the Americans are doing, we're probably doing that. But after a long time of saying that, me and my colleagues look at each other and like, well, if anybody in Canada is going to be doing this longitudinally, it's probably going to be us. So we have to figure out how to do these studies every 2 years. So every 2 years, we ping 1,500 Canadians, and we say, hey, what are you doing online? Where are you hanging out? Where are you, what platform are you abandoning? What platform are you picking up? So you can find all those different reports online right now. And the other thing for the researchers in the room, we also make software to help researchers and academics get the data they need, because not everybody wants to go out and get a second PhD in computer science just to get the data. So what we've done is we made a tool so that if you know how to use the search bar, you can then get the data set that you need to do your study. We can get data from Blue Sky, Mastodon, Reddit, Telegram, even X, if you're willing to pay Elon a little bit of money for the data. But once you pay him the money, you can come to us and use our tool to get the data that you need. And also you can get it from YouTube. And in January, we're going to release a tool that will let you get data from TikTok also. And the other thing that we do is we make dashboard to track misinformation. So for example, when the Russia-Ukraine war happened, overnight in 24 hours, we created a dashboard to track all fact checks around the world involving the Russia-Ukraine war. So instead of you going to Reuters or going to AFP or a news site in India to see if they've done any fact-checking relating to the Russian-Ukraine war, you simply go to the Conflict Misinfo, or we go to each and every one of those news sites from around the world. We look to see if they've done a fact-check recently involving the Russian-Ukraine war. We translated it into Russian, Ukrainian, and English, and bring it onto one dashboard. So in the morning, you just fire up our dashboard, and you can see all of the latest fact checks involving the war. And another app that we make is the deepfake tracker. Again, same thing. If there's any fact checks by any news organization around the world that involve a deepfake, we would bring it in. So again, you don't have to go to each of these sites to say, hey, do you have anything lately about deepfakes? And Note Tracker is something, for those of you who are still on X, this is a thing that tracks community notes. Community notes are user-submitted fact checks, right? But the problem with community notes is that they rarely ever see daylight. The majority of community notes are proposed, but they don't meet the threshold to be visible. What we've done is we gather all 1.7 million community notes, and we make it available to you. So if there's a topic that you're passionate about or you're monitoring, and you want to know if there's community notes related to it, you can come to our app and you can surface that particular community note so you are aware of the conversation around that topic. So in summary, what we do is we research, we train, we organize events and attend events like this, and we develop software to help other people do what they do. So next, I want to talk a little bit about news consumption habits and social media use in Canada. This is critical because as you are trying to reach your stakeholders, not only the people that you serve, but the people that are going to be funding you, the people that are going to be helping you and joining you at your next event, you want to know how people are consuming news. You want to know what social media people are using. In the old days, people go to the town square, they go to the mall, they go to church, they meet and talk and discuss what they'd like to do together next. Now, that's happening online. And as we always say in the lab, we go to where the people are, and right now the eyeballs are online, so we have to be online. So Reuters Institute just released a latest report where they show that most Canadians, 72%, get their news, online and via social media. 46% get it from social media, but when you combine, social media and digital stuff, it's a whopping 72%. Literally, that is where people are spending their time. So that's where you need to be if you want to reach a larger audience and a more targeted audience. I know that some of you might not like that idea, but sadly, that is the reality that we face. One of the reports that we put out, we do this every 2 years. This is the fifth time that we've done this, where we, like I said, ask Canadians where they're spending their time online. Surprise, surprise, it's still Facebook. That's the reason why is people want to know when the next birthday party is. They want to know which party they were not invited to. So that's where it's at. They may not actively post on there, but they're still lurking. I know you are. Surprisingly, for the latest version, the one platform in Canada that's actually losing user is X. Since Elon bought X, he's changed the flavor of what is online on that platform. And as a result, people are abandoning the platform. Maybe not to the level of some of us in the room would prefer, but there is a noticeable drop, and we were able to document that. And next, I'm going to talk a little bit about another survey that we just released on general AI adoption in Canada and concerns about misinformation. As you know, many of us are having AI thrust upon us. If you go to work, you open up and sign into your system on one day, and your boss announced that, hey, there's a new AI system that we prefer you to use. You go online, you use your favorite browser, and ta-da, there is now an unasked for AI feature. And if you don't use it, it nags you. It's like that little Clippy thing from Microsoft a long time ago. Do you want me to help you with this? That's what it's there. So it's hard to avoid. But the reason why it's everywhere is that some aspect of AI is useful. It is useful for some tasks, but it is not necessarily useful for every task. And one of the things that we as a society have to figure out is which of those tasks is it good for, and which one we should not let it touch ever. As Mario was pointing out earlier, there are certain things that we need to make sure and insist upon having the human in the loop. One of the questions we ask is, like, have you used an AI tool? 66% of Canadians said they have, right? The entryway for most Canadians is through leisure. They're doing it for fun. It's fascinating. It's interesting. Let's see what this thing can do. Let's see how it messes up, all right? That's what people are looking at. A lot of the people who are using it for work and study are actually the younger generation. That tells you a lot. It tells you that as they finish school, when they go into the workforce, this is something they're going to take with them. So whether we like it or not, we have to figure out what are the processes and procedure that we need to put in place now so that when these things are being used, we're not surprised by their outcome or their unintended consequences. And the other thing we ask is, to what extent do you agree with some of these statements? So, for example, we want to know whether they know how to use these tools. A lot of people don't, right? It's not surprising. It's so new, and literally it's changing all the time. I remember in 2023 when we were asked by a government department to write up the progress of AI and how it's going to change democratic institutions in Canada. We were literally changing the chapters week by week, because when we wrote something the week before, we said, it can't do that yet. The week after, it's like, well, actually, it can do that now. So we have to go back constantly. That's how fast things are changing. And lastly, we want to know, like, what are they worried about? And a lot of people are concerned about future elections, simply because when these tools are become more ubiquitous, I don't know what the politician is targeting and sending to you to get your vote versus what messages he or she is sending to the other person standing next to me. In the old days, somebody like me standing up on a podium like this, saying something, each one of you can turn to each other and say, do you agree with that? Oh, I agree with that. Or I don't agree with that, right? But now, when we're our own little private little world with our own little phone, I have no idea what the politician is telling you to get your vote. I don't know what's telling your neighbors to get his or her vote. And that's the problem. That's why targeted advertising is quite dangerous. And lastly, there's a recent report from StatCan that shows that a lot of Canadians are indeed worried about misinformation. So this is something that's not going to go away. This is something that's part of the bloodstream of our information ecosystem today. So last, I'm going to go into risk and mitigation. I might go over by a few minutes, but the risk and landscape in Canada. Some of you, if you're online, you've probably seen some of these AI images. If you notice, some of these look quite fake, and you and I could see that. But the point of these images is not to make you believe them, but it just helps to change the conversation. It forces you to think about these things, it forces you to talk about them, and it's used as a recruitment to identify other people who believe this way so that these groups can find new members. Right? Because people who will join in the comment section, who will say things that says they support this, guess what? They will be privately reached out to join. So as we sit and watch thinking that, oh, nobody could believe this. This looks obviously fake. That's not the point of these fake AI. It's not to make you believe. It's to find like-minded individuals so that they can grow their movement. Okay? So that's another reason why they're using them. But one of the reasons why it's so dangerous, it's so cheap now. Like in the old days, you have to have somebody with specialized skills to make something that looks good, that looks believable, and it'll take time. Now, literally, if I can type something into a search box, I can get an image that is passable. It's a lot faster, right? It's more visual and more targeted. I can create a whole bunch of different images targeting different groups of people. So now, in a day, I can create 10, 15 ads, right, showing an Asian face, showing a Muslim person in the same ad, changing very little. But now I have created all of this content that I can use to target different people to make them believe what it is that I want them to believe. There's some examples that you might have seen. Here in Germany, one of the far-right groups, they specialize in this. They literally flood the airwaves and online with this stuff. This summer, when there's that tragedy with the Southport stabbing that causes riots all over the UK, within minutes of the incident, somebody created that image, a very highly charged image with Big Ben there and a child screaming. And bearded men running through, and look how much attention it got within minutes, right? So this stuff can go viral in seconds. In the old days, it would take them time, and by that time, things have moved and changed, but now they literally can join the conversation in minutes. So negative impacts on Gen AI on immigrants and settlement. This is the meat of my presentation. For immigrants, it's a safety and belonging situation where they don't feel like they belong if they're constantly being bombarded and being told that they don't belong because of this type of content. Service uptake. They may not want to show up at some of your physical location if there are protests in front of it. Mental health situation, scam impersonation. They could be target of scams. Hi, you got a message from Immigration Services. Hi, you got an office from the Settlement Services, and so on. So the impact on service is real. There's lots of operational risk. Your organization could be the subject or the target of take an interview from a reporter. A day later, somebody is now become aware of your existence. They could then create misinformation about you and target your group. And that could hurt the ability of you to get funding in the future, for example. But more than anything else, more immediate could be the harm to your staff. People can vandalize your office and so on. So some resilience and mitigation strategies. You need to start thinking and talking about establishing an AI policy in the office. When do you use it? When shouldn't you use it? How do you mandate that there is a human in the loop so that somebody sign off on it and not just phone it in and the AI did it and just shoot it out the door? There needs to be a process in place where you say somebody verified this before you move on to it. And then the other thing is find people in your staff who are more likely to be the target. Not everybody in your organization are going to be as equally vulnerable, but some staff members will be targeted simply because they are more public-facing. So provide additional training, identify those people, and provide training for them. And proactively warn your client. When you hear of things that might affect them, don't wait for them to come in and say, I see this, is this real? Keep an eye on those things so that you can proactively send out messages that says, hey, this is what's going around in our community. Start WhatsApp group with each other, share things and incidents, so this way you're aware as a community. And before I go, I'm going to give you a peek at something that we're working on right now that we're going to release in February. As you know, a lot of people are using Facebook ads to run ads that are potentially anti-immigrants, and it's difficult to find them until they make a lot of noise and cause their impact on society already. What we want to do is create an app that as soon as somebody published an ad that's anti-immigrant, our system will be able to flag it. And then if organization can then get together, put out press release, put a spotlight on these bad actors so that as they're running these ads, we will know them as soon as they run them, as opposed to waiting for the ads to go viral and have an impact. By then, it's too late to put out that press release. Okay, so thank you.
All right, we are going to move to questions in just a moment, and I believe we're going to have a slide shortly to show you how to log on to Slido. But first, I want to say a huge thank you to all the panelists. I was furiously taking notes, learning so much from each of you. Thank you so much. We're going to, okay, there's the Slido. While you're sending your questions in, I would just like to ask the AV team. We're going to show you a video because this session is sponsored by Pre-Arrival Canada, YMCA of Greater Toronto. So while you're voting on questions, we have a short video from Pre-Arrival Canada.
Before moving to Canada, you must have a lot of questions.
We are immigrating to Canada and we don't know where to settle down.
Will I find a good job before I run out of savings?
Would anyone help me transition to school?
Hey guys, here is what you need to get ready before moving to Canada. Settlement programs will prepare you for your new life in Canada. They will provide you information on finding accommodation and registering children for school. Employment programs support you with your job search, writing Canadian-style resume, and learning about the workplace culture. And we can help you to find a mentor to guide you.
You and your family can get free online services. Prearrivalcanada.ca is designed to help you prepare before you arrive.
Don't wait. Visit prearrivalcanada.ca and register today.
Prearrivalcanada.ca and all programs offered are funded by IRCC, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada.
Okay, great. We did go a little bit over time with the speakers, but I don't think anybody here would be complaining. It was all really, really valuable. So let's start with a very popular first question. How do we balance advocating for more human oversight on immigration application reviews with clients' demand for faster processing times and the federal's budget's emphasis on AI and productivity? I'm going to give that to you, Mario.
Thank you. You know, in my view, I'm not certain that they're mutually exclusive. One of the things we've advocated for is some guardrail legislation to at least frame the core essentials, explicability, redress, the ability for an individual to have a human alternative if not eligible or have access to certain technologies. Faster processing times, this was kind of the sneaky, quiet, under-the-radar result of the heavy demand we saw. In 2022, they processed over 5 million decisions, IRCC, which was nearly double the year before, and it's escalated since then. So the need for faster processing cannot come at the expense of individualization or fairness. And there is a way the technology allows us to balance both. It's getting the legislators to appreciate that context, the courts to understand it's not, the technology is not the focus, really. It is the assumptions and the human talent that underlie that technology. So that's how we have to look at balancing it. We need some guardrails, we need some essentials, and then build out from there.
All right, thank you. And one for you, Philip, I think. How does the news ban from Canada's Online News Act impact disinformation and potentially the promotion of unbacked, opinion-based reporting on social media?
I have not seen any study that's shown the exact impact, but I believe that it is having an impact due to the fact that right now, when people are on Facebook, they cannot share links to any news media. So if they see something that they think is incorrect, there's no way for them to share a post, anything that's reputable to refute that. So I think that's something that we have to work on and get that changed.
All right. And I'm just going to go down a little bit to one for the researchers on the panel, the English language training. As AI becomes more common in teaching English to newcomers, how do we assure that if it ever replaces teachers, immigrants still get the human or emotional support they need during that long journey?
Yeah, I think it's a great question that we're all grappling with. One of the things that we're trying to do is look at teacher training and where we're headed in that direction. And basically, with our project, we started a new kind of training environment for that, looking at tools and activities that are integrated. But I'll pass it to Paul because I know you've had some experience directly in your class with your AI students.
Yes. So we're trying to figure out ways where we can use AI in efficient and ethical ways. And in some of my classes, I've done research studies where we use AI or Gen AI as a AI chatbot, where we have students log into a certain platform that we've developed, and we use it for students to demonstrate their understanding of course content. It seems to work quite well. The students are always trying to hack the system. They're always trying to find, give the answer that the AI chatbot is asking. We've made it pretty much foolproof so that students have to spend about 15 or 20 minutes interacting with this AI chatbot and basically coaching them or teaching them what they know about certain subject matter. With regards to replacing teachers, I mean, I think that's a concern in so many industries. I don't know if we have a real answer at this time for that, but that's where we're at with AI.
Risk and opportunity everywhere we look.
Really.
All right. Well, by far the most popular question is, what is the federal government getting right about AI adoption, and what is it getting wrong? What can or should Canadians do to make sure the feds get it right? And I'm going to throw that open to the floor. Don't be shy.
I can start. I think the directives they've come out with, it's actually one of the leaders in the world, so we've done some good, what I call soft law, to give us some guidance, the Treasury Board directives, the Gen I directives, which are positives. I think the way, and IRCC is, at this point, in my understanding, the largest user of this technology. So they've been a leader, and the algorithmic impact assessments are encouraging, but you can't you don't shouldn't need a degree to be able to understand them, and that's part of the plain language. And Philip can probably speak to this better than I can, but the issue of deep fake, especially in our world now, as advocates or support, is the evidence that's being brought forward by the newcomer that you're dealing with, is it legitimate? And can you rely on it? And we do not have AI detection tools that are ubiquitous. And again, Philip, I'll throw this to you, but I think that's one of the things that the federal government really has to grapple with, is how far what devices. The federal courts come out with an AI declaration, which says when you're, as an advocate, you're using AI in your pleadings to declare that, but it is a real challenge.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit. The main issue is transparency. People want to know that you are using that. If you are, you should declare it. Why? If you declare it, it makes people more aware, and then they can question the results of what you are deciding on. And the other thing is that we need to be teaching critical thinking and going beyond just media literacy. Remember when Google first came out, librarians dropped everything and basically spent about 4 or 5 years just teaching us how to Google better, right? Mm-hmm. We need similar initiative now to basically teach people the limitation of AI, what it can be used for, what it can't be used for. I know the technology is new and is still rolling out, and new features are being added, but this is something that we as a community needs to be staying on top of, because the people that we are helping are going to have to grapple with these, and they'll have to do it on their own. And we're going to be the kind of people that you turn to. So you need to be having speakers like us coming to your events to talk to your community, for example. But also, when you are able to talk to a politician, remind them that, people still don't know. From our survey, you can see that a lot of people still don't know how to use these tools, right? And everywhere I look, I haven't seen anybody putting out any fundings at all to improve that kind of training.
Thank you. One last question before we wrap up, and I think it's important on a serious topic like this to give people maybe a sense of a way forward. So how can IRCC-funded organizations like many of the organizations in this room, but I would argue it's not just IRCC funded. Any organization working in the sector supporting immigrants engage in advocacy around AI and IRCC or government usage of it where it impacts immigrants. Are there ongoing campaigns that organizations can sign on to as a way to mitigate the advocacy funding limitations? Is there a working group that we know of that is focused on AI in immigration?
So I can speak to, there are AI working groups at the Canadian Bar Association and various organizations, and I think as settlement agencies, it's important to collaborate with those organizations because ultimately it is going to be about delivery, it's going to be about effectiveness, and it's about insisting on certain, as I've said before, guardrails that are essential in the work that you do. You should be able to have that explicability, that transparency that Philip spoke to. And these are the red lines we need to insist on, not only when we're dealing with our own clients, but with other organizations. And I think coming together, as I said in my opening remarks, collectively, it's a profound responsibility right now. You know, we're talking about generative AI, but we're already on to agentic AI. And that is a further dependency and a further move towards ultimate reliance on people believing this is an oracle as opposed to a support. So I think there's a key role to play.
Thank you. With that, we are going to wrap up. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers. You've given us so much to think about. And I think I'll leave you with this parting thought that came actually, Mario, from your presentation, is thinking about what kind of doorways we're building and whether they are visible or invisible. We all deal with these doorways in different forms. As you move through these sessions today, you can think about the drivers of change, which is the theme of this whole conference. Consider the opportunities offered by AI and the safeguards needed. Thank you all so much. I believe there is a break now, and then it's on to the first breakout sessions of the day. Thank you.